down to the rally, we've got a whole panel of absolutely amazing speakers from around the world today. And like I said, I think one of the best things about Marxism this year has been to hear the absolutely inspiring stories of people from around the world. So our first speaker today is Mani Tano, who's a leading member of the International Socialist Group in Ghana. He's come over for Marxism this year, and I think actually one of the best meetings this year was to hear Mani talking about the inspiring class struggle in Africa that's been kicking off over the last year, and it's been absolutely fantastic to hear that. Mani is also a leading trade unionist and a coordinator of the Anti-Privatisation Network in Ghana.
Thank you, Tom. It's really great to be here, because one of the things which is fantastic about Marxism this year is that when you come off strong, it doesn't feel like it's an interruption to come and debate, to come and analyze, to come and put together perspectives which will go back and enrich and deepen that struggle. In Africa this year, we have seen a whole swathe of different struggles, the most important, of course, being the Nigerian awakening, what we call the Nigerian awakening in January this year. And one of the things that's relevant about the Nigerian awakening is not simply about the militancy, it's not simply about the strength of the general strike, but what it asserted about the role of the working class as the center of unifying forces, as the center of change, as the center of empowering people, the length and breadth of society. And I think that tells us immediately why Marxism is so important. Because our politics tells us that there's a universal validity in acknowledging and recognizing the role of the working class and relating your politics to that. But there's also a universal validity in acknowledging that the strategic challenges of the organized working class include, for example, the role that the trade union bureaucracy plays, which you know very well. But at the same time in Nigeria, when this strike was going on over the fuel subsidies, the same thing was threatening to blow out in Ghana as well. There, the union leadership was much quicker, much more faster in going ahead to knock together a rotten compromise with the government, with the blessing of the IMF, ahead of any kind of struggle. So for us, it's not simply about our long-term theories which we constantly seek to enrich, which we constantly seek to reformulate, to fit the times and to fit what we anticipate as the kinds of needs that we're going to face. But it's also important to establish, and this is what Marxism has done, certainly for me and for my comrades from Africa, it's important to establish the type of narrative that allows us to bind together the different concerns, the different challenges, and the different struggles that people are involved in. Because without that, I think that we cannot build the kind of unifying movement that we seek to build. Today, many things are upside down. 5 years ago, Africa is one of the basket cases in the world. In fact, the Economist did have a headline called the basket case, Africa and the basket case. Today, it is gushing over effusively about Africa being the new area of miracle growth, the new area of global growth, and it's not simply propaganda. A report by an organization such as McKinsey claims that 25% of all global foreign direct investment went to Africa last year. I'm not sure whether that's actually an accurate figure, but nonetheless it tells you that there's a dramatic transformation, and that the main impact, the main implication of that transformation for working people is that they're increasingly absorbed into the turmoil, the volatility, the insecurity that global capitalism represents today. And that is why it's important for us to establish that kind of narrative. Without that, even right here in Europe, we have learned, we can see that divisions will arise. What if Irish people or Greek people arose and said, now we are the victims of imperialism, because our economic strategy, our economic policy is dominated by the Troika, by the ECB, by the EU, by the IMF, and so on and so forth. And what if we said instead, fine, you Irish may be victims of imperialism, but it's the Irish companies exploiting oil resources in Africa and so on and so forth. Okay, basically we need that common narrative, and I think that Marxism and the Marxist tradition, as well in particular as the tradition of the International Socialists, is a vital ingredient in this process. We have done that this week. Because of course, one of the biggest threats that we face is fragmentation. That is why a unified narrative is also increasingly important. It's not simply about the fragmentation represented by what those people call New Dawn or whatever, the fascists in Greece, or the EDL here, and so, or Boko Haram, and so on and so forth in different parts of the world. It's also the fragmentation which arises from our misunderstanding about the nature of capitalism. One extreme, and the fragmentation which arises about the partial views and the limitations of aspects of our own movement, people who may be our allies and so on and so forth. In fact, one example, which is right here in Britain, and it's almost like a caricature, is the idea that an international development NGO has gone and set up a hedge fund in order to be able to protect its own income stream such that it can continue to give development assistance to poor people in Africa. Now, that is exactly the kind of solidarity we don't need. It is not that poverty is not important. Of course, poverty is absolutely important. But when you go and reaffirm financial speculation and the financial system through your participation in hedge funds, begging and scraping before rulers so that you get access to deliver food aid and so on and so forth. In actual fact, what you're doing is not simply fragmenting, you are actually disempowering on an active basis. But we have a response to that. It's not simply about poor people struggling on their own and poor people by God, they do struggle. It's not simply about the strikes in Nigeria, it is those who are taking up arms in many cases, whether it's sticks and stones or other arms, against mining companies, against oil companies, against land grab, against the water grab, and so on and so forth. And we know increasingly what the enmeshing of the raw materials economy with the rhythms of global finance represents as a reality. Whether it's in terms of food, whether it's in terms of climate, and whether it's in terms of raw materials and basic livelihoods across the world. We know what it means also for people in the West when they're dispossessed of their houses and so on and so forth. But the fact still remains that we cannot have a politics which says that me fighting for you, well, I don't have a mortgage, but you fighting for your mortgage, you on your own as a one-man band, you can face your building society or bank or whatever it is. That is why the collective solution of taking over the banks, taking over the housing stock is actually we also need a sense of focus. Where do we start from? You can't simply walk off the wall. You can't go and smash up a bank. But one bank won't do. You need to take up all the banks, you need to take out so on and so forth. And that is why looking for that systemic agency within our midst, of which we are part of, or we are beside, is essential to whatever we do. And that focus requires us to understand three things. And those are the 3 points I want to make. First, is that even in the question of democracy, which will allow us to build increasingly participatory movements, it's necessary to find mechanisms that permanently establish that democracy. Because democracy also functions on the basis, as we have heard this week, on the basis of trust, on the basis of confidence, that our fates are tied together, that many of the decisions that we take, the logic allows us individual initiative, it allows us to be leaders, it allows us to understand that leaders do have a role to play. Trotsky put it very well. He says, for example, that you can have a democratic decision about which carriage of the train you sit in. But it is very difficult to go around consulting people whether the brakes should be applied when an accident threatens. In other words, that train driver, that person who is part of the skills of our class, that person who is able to apply the brakes in our common interest so that we get to our common destination, is not riding roughshod over our ambitions, over our needs. On the contrary, the logic of what he's doing is that we have a collective interest, a collective destination, and a vehicle to do so. And one of those vehicles that is central, as we're finding in our experience in Africa and across different parts of the world, is the role of the party. It is not necessarily always a popular debate to take up, but it's an important debate to take up. It's an important debate to take up because we know that very often all kinds of struggles are not necessarily able to find the focus that we need today. So take a country like Senegal, and believe you me, from Senegal to Swaziland, especially with the winds blowing across the desert, the kind of winds that normally blow across the desert are what we call Hamakan winds, where everything is covered in dust. We're all brown, we all get, well, I'm red and brown already, but an additional cosmetic layer, so to speak. And so on and so forth. This time, the winds that are blowing are the winds which are blowing from below toward the top of society. And the kind of meltdown that we see in places like Greece, for example, with the vote of new democracy, we're also seeing with ruling class parties in Africa. In Senegal, for example, the ruling party seats in parliament melted from 140, 150 seat parliament to 12. Okay? It is the ordinary people, together with the trade unions and so on and so forth, who were basically the driving force of this dramatic electoral change. But they do not have a focus of taking power for themselves. I'm not saying that taking power for ourselves is an immediate question, an immediate thing on the order of the day for all of us. But it is a question that we have to be increasingly orientated on. It's a question that requires us to understand that changing the world without taking power is less and less an option. Especially when you're dealing with the question of a global crisis, of a system which is as rapacious, as venal, as all of us are seeing. And that is why it's important that when we talk about the focus of the party, we also have to talk about what that means in terms of the interlinkage between the party and the class. Because it's important that we learn the lessons of the Zimbabwe women, unemployed women, who when there's a strike, go and make demands on the Zimbabwe Trade Union Confederation, the ZCTU, that unemployed women should be part of that strike. Not because they do one job for their families, they do one job for themselves. It is that type of unity which, being organized on a permanent basis, is the type of university that Marxism, the learning of that process, sharing those experiences, is the type of university that Marxism has provided us this week. And why we have to build that party is important as well. Look, I came from Africa, as the chair said, for this meeting. Fantastic things about being in London for Marxism. Not everything is fantastic. The weather. When you come here with the notion of an English summer, it is a travesty. A complete travesty. But I enjoy it without any bitterness for two reasons. One of the reasons why you have to enjoy it is that in a period where we have to change the world, we can change meanings, we can even change times. Come October and November, the type of mobilization that will take place in Britain, led by the TUC, is the type of mobilization that the party and the movement has to put itself right at the center. Such that unemployed people are part of it. So that the pensioners are part of it. So that those who came from Pride on Saturday are part of it. So that the climate activists are part of it. The occupied people are part of it. All of them coming with their demands, all of them finding basis of unification. So that in autumn we'll have a summer. Resonate the length and breadth of the globe. And that is the second reason why it's bearable to endure this rotten, fraudulent summer. Because you look around you in London, everybody from every corner of the world is here. I myself joined the Socialist Workers' Party and the International Socialist Tendency when I lived here in London. If you build your party, if you build your movement, pull in your black, your white, your African, your God knows whatever, believe you me, it will resonate. It will resonate in a way that will blow probably slightly less warm winds than are coming from Tahrir Square. Right across the length and breadth of this continent. That is why it's important that in your red October, in your red November, you should bear in mind that you must cast your eye over the multitude that can come together in this agenda that we're talking about. Because that is the way we translate what the slogan of our Egyptian comrades into reality. That is the way we make sure that the factories, the farms, the streets, the squares are all one hand. That is the way that one hand gives a fatal blow to the ruling class and the austerity and gives us a blow. Building up our own power to the kind of society we need and we know we deserve. Thank you very much.
We're going to announce our next speaker because it's also been a year of incredible class struggle here in Britain. We've seen some of the biggest strikes for almost 100 years. We've seen some fantastic movements, and actually it's the grassroots trade union activists, people in our unions who've helped to build that movement, and that's why I'm very happy to announce Marianne Owens from PCS Union is our next speaker.
The last speaker, but I'm going to have to go. Right, I mean, you talk about, I'll just introduce myself. I live in South Wales, I work in a tax office. And I was going to talk a bit about resistance on the ground as an ordinary worker, because I do go into my office and go to work, and there's 2,500 people in my office, so it gives me a fairly good idea of the mood of the working class when I go into work in the morning. People stop me and talk to me about things. And what that has meant is that over the last 18 months, I've seen, the highs and the lows. I mean, when we got back into work after November the 30th, I couldn't believe it. It was like we could take over the world. You've got people who would say, how are we going to sort out this? What are we going to do to sort out this? How are we going to do that? Because people were really confident. People were saying it wasn't getting fantastic. We shut the bridges, we shut the road, nothing happened. Everything was closed down by us, and that's the power we've got. But I also then have seen, you know, the anger and the frustrations that came after that when things started to slow down. I mean, after the 19th of December, when some of the unions started to sign the heads of agreement, I mean, you went into work, it was completely flat. People were saying, you know, why have we stopped? Why aren't we fighting? The Tories haven't gone away. They haven't stopped attacking us. Why aren't we doing more about it? When can we go out next? You know, I don't often get people saying to me, when can we go on strike next? It's starting to happen quite a lot at the moment. But I think one of the things is that it's not just been about pensions. I mean, pensions was something that we managed to bring lots of people together under the banner of. But I mean, certainly from the perspective of where I am, you know, it's about pay, it's about pensions, it's about the shit way they treat us in work, it's about privatisation, and you know, all of these things. But as well as that, I think we see a lot of other things in society, don't we? I mean, we've just as a sort of a brief outline, you know, I'm in an office. We've lost 4 outline offices. You know, we've only got the one big office in Cardiff. Anything outside of Cardiff in South Wales is now closed. You know, everybody's been moved into one office, and loads of people have lost their jobs. We've lost 30,000 members nationally, and they said they want to get rid of another 10,000. And this is at a time when we know there are hundreds of billions of pounds being uncollected. It's not about you know your comedians who are using a legal loophole. I mean, that would be easy enough for them to close if they wanted to do that. It's about multinational companies, people like Philip Green and that, they're actually getting away with murder by actually not paying the taxes. And we're being told, you know, this is being cut, you're being cut, your jobs are being cut, but we can see because we do the work, but that's not being collected in. And people, you know, it's really easy conversion to make, isn't it? Let's tax the rich, and then we'll be able to keep our jobs. You know, this is because we deliver services as well, we see the human cost of what's going on now. As I say, I'm in the tax office, not in the DWP, but I can't imagine how the people in the job centre in Birmingham felt last week when somebody set fire to themselves outside because their benefits have been cut. And this is the human cost of what's being done. I mean, these incidents are being more and more frequent. And it's not the fault of the worker sat in the office who's been told you can't give that person any money. It's the people that are actually making the decision to cut those benefits and to throw people into absolute poverty. And I think we really need to start to do something about this. But as I say, I mean, the strikes actually weren't just about pensions at all. We can see all of this. One of the things that we've been on strike about as well is privatisation, because we've got plus with the 10,000 jobs they want to get rid of now, it's because they want to privatise our call centres. So because we'd had such an upsurge and people were really confident, but then it got low. To actually get our members back out on strike to fight privatisation, I mean, we can't wait with that battle till the autumn. We've got to fight that now, because we're going to lose the services, and the service users aren't going to be able to get through. It is going to be tough, so we need to do it now. But to actually rebuild people's confidence after what has happened with the pensions group has actually been quite difficult. We've done it. We were on strike 2 weeks ago. We had about 80% of our membership out, and you know, some places we had 99%. We had some of the biggest picket lines. We need to keep this momentum going over the summer, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about that privatisation dispute and just how vicious this government is with it. We've got call centres. The call centres that deliver tax credits. So the most vulnerable people that we deal with in tax credits are people who are really poverty stricken that actually need money, benefits, tax credits. What they've done is they've got 2 multinational anti-trade union companies to do a trial. They've paid them £4 million to bring in 100 staff in 2 locations to see if they can do the work any better than we can do the work, or any cheaper than we can do the work. Now, they're paying them minimum wage. We worked out that if they were to employ 100 staff, or the same number of staff that were actually employed by HMRC, it would have cost them about just under 3 million, not 4. So I don't know where the rest of that money's gone, and they're earning an awful lot less than us. We've been sort of rifling through the bins, and we've managed to find their contracts and terms and conditions. They've got all sorts of things they can do. So they're saying they can search their bags, they can look at their phones, they can look at their home internet and emails to make sure that they're not leaking anything out. You know, they've not got any right to any holidays if they've got no sick pay, if they're off ill, and they're on temporary contracts. And the worst bit of it is they're in the same offices as us, but they've put up these great big screens, so they're behind the screens. We're the other side. They won't even let us go in there to do a health and safety inspection. It's that want to keep us away from them that much, because we want to go in there, we want to recruit them. We want to say to them, actually, if you join the union, we can help you fight so that you can actually, you know, start to fight back against these nasty people that you know, making a profit out of you, basically. And I think actually making a profit out of a public service that delivers benefits is something that is quite disgusting. I mean, that's profiteering from as trade unionists now is so that we can have the kind of action that you've had in Tahrir Square, the kind of action you've had in other places like Greece and Spain and so on and so forth. You know, we need to really get that momentum going. Now, if you've got small disputes, you know, that can keep it going for a bit. There's other things we need to do. I mean, May the 10th, there was a lot of us on May the 10th, and I'll tell you a little story about something that happened where we were. We had a PCS regional committee, and a lot of us said, well, we'd like to have a demonstration, please, we're on strike. We would like everybody to know that we're on strike, we want people to know exactly what's happening. But it wasn't just us that were on strike, there was Unite as well, and some of the officials from Unite said, oh, well, you know, on the 30th of November we had 7,000 people marching through Cardiff, there's only going to be a couple of hundred of you, it's not really going to look very good, we're not going to have a demonstration, we'll just hide you in a rally hall at the back of the city centre, where nobody can see you and nobody can actually know that you're out on strike. So, because we've been doing a little bit of sort of anti-cuts, Unite the Resistance, grassroots organising, we started to build up some networks. Some of us did a little bit of a ring round, and quite short now said, right, what we're going to do is meet at the Inara Bevan statue, which is the place where we meet for everything in Cardiff, because it's a bit symbolic. You know, we're going to stand under the Inara Bevan statue and we're going to give out our trade unions leaflets for the public that tell people why we're on strike. So we get there, there's about 50 people there, there's about 7 banners, of course we made a couple of speeches while we were there, we had a megaphone there, we've got all the trade union banners, we gave out leaflets and talked to the public, but then we thought, well, hang on a minute, there's 50 odd of us here, and we've got banners, and we've got a megaphone, and somehow we've all got to get over to that official rally, so why don't we march up the high street? And we're not usually allowed to march up the high street, because if you ask the police, they send you all around the back, because we can't, you know, let us anywhere near the shops for the public. So we actually had an absolutely fantastic march up the high street, and when you saw the press coverage that evening, it wasn't of the rally with people in suits sitting making boring speeches and everybody clapping and it all looking very stage managed. The video, the television cameras were turned on us, marching down the road, singing militantly, the Workers United will never be defeated. Now, that's just one way you can do it. And the other thing from that is that when we were on strike then 2 weeks ago, a lot of the people from the other trade unions that had come on that actually came to our picket line to show us solidarity, because we started to build those networks up where we can actually just do things, you know, we let some people know that we're on strike and other people come along and show support and solidarity, and that's something that's really, really important. Now, I think that coming up to the 20th of October for the TUC demonstration, we're going to need to start to rebuild those networks, because although, I mean, I'm a revolutionary socialist, I understand that the trade union movement is not trying to create the conditions for a revolution. The trade union movement is there to protect workers' rights. But I actually do want to be in the situation that all of the comrades from around the world have been talking about, and actually getting to something that actually bring this government and this rotten system down. I mean, the bankers and Bob Diamond and all that, you know, this has got to go. So, I mean, we need to get absolutely everybody there. We need to build these networks of solidarity, because that demonstration is not going to be a revolution, but it is going to be a vehicle towards which we can build the confidence. And after we've had that demonstration, we then want to be out on strike and on the streets. Now, when you switch the news on at the moment, I don't know if people have watched, but I have been sort of looking, and I've been looking on the news websites on a daily basis, seeing, right, who's on strike today. So if you have a look, you've got Ford workers, you know, you've got people in factories, you've got employed people, you know, the workers in Sheffield at the recycling plant. You can look, you can pick a strike every day. It's not just the private sector, it's the public as well. And we need to start bringing this together. Now, I know we've got the anti-trade union laws in this country that say, you know, we have to have a ballot and we can't do this and you can't do that, you've got to wait 30 days. But I want to get to the point where we build that confidence up so we can say, right, okay, the recycling workers in Cardiff are out. We're not standing for this, they're struggling the same as ours. This is about Tory attacks on the working class, and it's about profiteering and the destruction of the welfare state. We're going out with them. Stop the anti-trade union laws. And that's what solidarity on the ground so that we can let each other know what's happening and we can actually, actually start to build the kind of things that are there. So for the 20th of October, I think we need to make sure everybody that we've ever spoken to is on that demonstration. I mean, I want that to be 2-3 million people strong and angry and militant. So it's pensioners, it's UK on court, it's students, it's disabled people, it's everybody that's being attacked. Because that is the vehicle with which we're going to actually get to the point where we can have that kind of solidarity and strikes. And it's the solidarity and strikes, which we've seen from Egypt, is the way we bring these bastards down.
And I'm sure many of you are familiar with Alfie's case, but I think it really illustrates the level of police brutality and the clampdown on protesting which we've seen in the last year. Alfie's a student defendant who was attacked by the police on a student demonstration last year, had to undergo emergency brain surgery to save his life, only to then be accused of violent disorder by the very same police officers. And his case is still ongoing. And Alfie's going to speak for us, but he's also played a leading role in the Defend the Right to Protest campaign, which has actually been campaigning over the last year to protect the rights of student protesters, but also to campaign against police brutalisation wherever it occurs.
The student protests on November the 10th, 2010 kick-started the fight back against austerity, against the cuts and against injustice. Students, workers, unemployed, black and white, young and old, this was working class resistance. The courtyard of Millbank Tower resounded with chants of Tory scum, and from the roof the occupiers texted, "We stand against the cuts in solidarity with all the poor, elderly, disabled and working people affected. We are against all cuts and the marketisation of education. We are occupying the roof of Tory HQ to show we are against the Tory system of attacking the poor and helping the rich. This is only the beginning."
Yes.
Since then, we have seen the TUC Deborah March, the occupation of shops, squares and universities, strikes in the public and private sector, hundreds of community campaigns and demonstrations, and the August uprisings. And we can say again, this is only the beginning. But with every courageous collective action, we've been subjected to state violence and repression. Repression on the streets, in the schools and the universities, in our communities and workplaces. Why have we seen this repression? Because the attempts of the ruling class, of the politicians, bankers and capitalists to make the people pay for the crisis, to accept the trebling of tuition fees, scrapping of EMA, job losses, lower pay, paying more and more, paying more and working longer for smaller pensions, privatisation, cuts to education, housing, legal aid, disability benefits, NHS, and on, these attempts are failing. We will not have it, we will resist, we are resisting, we will not sit back. And that's why we resort to police violence, to state violence, to punishment and the restrictive use of laws. We see it all around the world, the state has been unable to convince workers and the people of the necessity of austerity measures, and they resort to state violence and repression to push these through. Their aim is to divide us, isolate us, turn us against each other, whether that is good protester, bad protester, British worker, immigrant, employed, unemployed, and we must not let them. In the face of this repression, the principles of self-defence, collective support and solidarity are essential. I know from my experience and the experience of many other defendants from the student protest just how key this is. I would like to thank everyone who's defended me and all the other students, and again receive support from students, community campaigns, unemployed workers and trade unions. And it's only with this support that I and others have been able to stand up and fight for justice. defend the right to protest for their support and hard work. Defend the right to protest is defending people in the courts, on the streets. It's connected the struggles and the attacks on workers and the attacks on justice campaigns and deaths in police custody. Together, working with groups like Legal Defence Monitoring Group and Green and Black Cross, we've seen many victories in the courts. When we've stood up and fought and when we have the support of workers and communities, we win in the courts, and that's been the message. Defence and solidarity must be the cornerstone of all of our struggles, not just on protesting and picket lines, but in our communities, standing against police racism, and on the streets, standing against the racist EDL when they march. And of course, we need international solidarity. With everyone fighting back around the world, and that's been amazing in Marxism to see it everywhere. It's been brilliant. We need to defend those facing repression, because those being attacked for fighting against cuts and injustice deserve our solidarity, but also as a movement we need strong defence campaigns which will enable us to protest and strike effectively and build the confidence of others to get involved. Like I said, we've been also working with justice campaigns, and just last week I attended 2 cases in Southwark. First, the inquest of Sean Rigg, who died in Brixton Police Station in 2008, and then I went with Sean's mother and his sisters, Samantha Rigg, to Southwark Crown Court to support the Tomlinson family at the trial of Simon Harwood, who killed Ian Tomlinson on the G20 protest. Their struggle for justice and the fight to hold the state accountable for the murder and violence is our struggle as well. Building on the principles of defence and collective solidarity, we need to rekindle the resistance that we've seen over the last 2 years. I was in this room a month or so ago when John Carlos, Janet Alger and Doreen Lawrence spoke. It was an amazing event, spoke about the spirit of resistance, fighting against racism and injustice. And one fight for us is the Olympics. One obvious example is the obscene spectacle of private lanes for the rich, which are crying out for some kind of direct action, I think. Demonstration against the corporate military Olympics on the 28th of July, and all the local campaigns fighting against the destruction these games will cause to our communities. We must also support the new monitoring project and the people of East London who have been able to resist the mass influx of military security and police personnel. NMP are organising community legal observing to monitor police behaviour during the games. And the discussing examples of police racism, which we know are so common, they emerged from Newham Borough. And throughout the games, there will be intensified policing, stop and search, and harassment of Newham's Black and Asian and Muslim youth. They need our solidarity too. Well, above all, what we need is mass resistance this autumn. On the 14th of October, we have the Defend the Right to Protest conference, which I hope you all come along to, where we're going to try and link together the defence against the attacks on the streets and our right to protest and the right to strike, police racism and the justice campaigns. And we need to learn some practical lessons when we go into the autumn, so we're not spending the next 2 years defending people in the courts. 20th of October, of course, we have the TUC march again, and we need to see millions of workers and students marching on the streets against austerity. And students and workers must be on the 27th, on the UFFC, the United Friends and Family campaign, on the 27th of October, to show solidarity with those fighting against police racism and deaths in police custody. To raise in a collective voice, enough is enough, no more deaths in police custody, no justice, no peace. October is my retrial. We hope you will be there so we can win a victory for the movement and turn the tide on state repression. And of course in November we will see massive strikes, and workers and trade unionists and community activists will join picket lines up and down the country to ground the government to a halt and say no to austerity, cuts and inequality. Students must be on the picket line, side by side with workers. And also I personally hope that PCS workers shut down Kingston Crown Court so I can come and join on the picket lines. November the 21st, students will take to the streets, occupy universities, and the struggles will call back students, inspiring them. And we need workers out with us too. We need the spirit of Greece and Egypt, where students and workers have fought together. And hopefully I'll be equipped then to be on the streets as well. Last time round, students almost brought the government to their knees. This time round, when students, workers and communities fight together, we can overturn tuition fees, we can bring back EMA, we can stop the cuts, we can defend public services, and we can bring the government down. In resistance, courage and solidarity.
Okay, I'm going to introduce Alex Pico, Master Watcher, leader of the PCS union. I think, Mark played an absolutely crucial role in the pension struggle this year in bringing those strikes to the fore. And one of my favourite moments of the last year was seeing Mark on Question Time laying waste to the Tory agenda. And so it's very exciting to have him speaking at Marxism today.
I can vouch myself, I think having done a number of these over the years, this is the biggest closing rally certainly that I've been at, so I think we should congratulate the organisers and everyone who wants to be part of discussion and organising and seeing what we can do about defeating the tremendous attacks that we currently face. And in that sense, I do want to start by just saying how amazing the speeches have been up to now. Every single one of them has been absolutely inspirational. I want to pledge not only PCS's continuing support for Defend the Right to Protest, which we're very proud to support, but also to say, Alfie, that when we were on strike on May the 10th, I don't know if we can repeat it, in Southwark Crown Court, jurors refused to cross the PCS picket line in the case. That we need to see if we're going to defeat the austerity agenda that's coming not just from the British government but coming from capitalism across the world. So thank you very much for the speeches. And Marianne, can I just say, not only did I enjoy your speech, I'm always proud to say that you're one of our best activists at PCS. And it's precisely because of activists like Marianne that the PCS can turn its conference resolutions and decisions of its executive into strike after strike after strike, and without them we wouldn't be able to do any of them. I finally want to say that I have come here on the eve of my son's work experience. My son is 15, and with all the topical stuff about workfare and people having to sleep under bridges and all the exploitation taking place by major employers, I'm delighted to say that my son's work experience starting tomorrow is 2 weeks with love music head races. Smith is currently negotiating with 2 concerned parents about whether the EDL protest in Bristol should be part of the work experience. I'm happy to say the parents say yes. A couple of weeks ago, I was at a Unite the Resistance rally that took place just down the road. And I've said what brilliant speeches we have today. I have to say the speech by the striking Spanish miner that I sat through was one of not just the most emotional, but inspirational speeches that I've had the privilege to sit through in years. Because what we got from him was class struggle in the raw. People fighting to defend their communities, their families, their way of life. And just listening to the inspiration of that struggle and the direct action tactics that they were taking, I think not only give us food for thought, it should give us heart. That in Britain we need to see far more class struggle to defeat what the government is doing. And one of the things I said in that speech was that I'd taken a careful note of the tactics, and I think I talked about rocket launchers at the time. I did make the joke that I'd be writing to my good friend Dave Prentice on the Monday morning to share these tactical experiences with him. I have to say I bottled that one, but what I did live up to my pledge that the PCS did make a substantial donation to the Spanish Miners' Party. Negotiating as part of our donation to see if we can get PCS sponsorship of the rocket launchers. The point about the Spanish miners that did make me think when I went home that night was actually it made me remember when I was young, growing up in the South Wales valleys at the time of the British miners' strike. Not just the ones in the 1970s, which were successful, where we saw the 3-day week, we saw the lights literally go out, and we saw the power of the working class in front of our very eyes. But more for me, the one in the 80s, that I lived through when I was in my late teens and early 20s, when I stood with my friends and family who struck for over a year to defend communities and jobs and against the vicious onslaught by Margaret Thatcher. And there's a lot said about that strike, but let me repeat here what I keep telling the journalists. I think we should, all of us in this movement, be eternally proud and grateful to the NUM leadership and all of those people who bravely fought like lions to defend themselves from such outrageous attacks. I'll tell you why that's important. It's important because we have to learn the lessons of what went on in the miners' strike in 1984. Now there's two lessons that I think are worth us bearing in mind. The first one is the treacherous role played by TUC leaders who stood back for a year while the miners were essentially allowed to fight on their own and subsequently were defeated. Now that was a treachery that we can't do anything about now, but we can learn from it and say we are not prepared to see that happen again. And why is that topical? I tell you why it's topical. Because just before June the 30th last year, when the PCS, ATL, NUT and the UCU kicked off the idea of coordinated strike action on pensions, I was at a meeting at the TUC. And after the meeting finished, I got invited in for one of those private chats with one of the TUC leaders. I won't name him, but he's about to retire. I tell you what he said to me. He said to me, "You're nuts. Why are you striking on June the 30th? Why do you believe it can make any difference? And did you not learn the lesson that we learned? That after the miners' strike, resistance through industrial action is entirely futile." If the leaders of our movement are so infected with a self-centered defeatism and fatalism, then it helps us explain what happened on November the 30th and afterwards, and why our task now has to be to ensure that as we go into this autumn of unrest, we do not allow the same thing to happen again. Remind ourselves why it's important. Let's just think of the daily brutality that people now in Britain almost begin to take for granted as it gets pumped out from the news outlets every day. Marianne referred to it. But whoever thought we'd be in a country where outside a job centre in Birmingham, a claimant would set fire to himself out of despair about losing his benefit? Well, you know, it's even worse than that. Because some people might say an isolated incident is something that's tragic, but it's isolated. Senior managers in Job Centre Plus 3 months ago issued an internal memorandum where they said the staff had to be prepared for dealing with suicide on a regular basis as one of the consequences of the government's welfare attacks. Now this is the year 2012. We've got people trying to deliver on a welfare state that has been eroded in front of our very eyes. Attempted suicide. People who find that no matter how ill they are, they fail the work test and are told that their incapacity benefits or employment support allowance is to be withdrawn. We have to say that if our movement is anything, that whilst we fight for jobs and for education and for our future, we must always remember defence of a decent welfare state is something we should take pride in ensuring is at the heart of our slogans as we go forward. And it's not just the attempted suicides. Who would have thought that people living in close to Stoke Newington would be threatened with relocation to Stoke-on-Trent? because housing benefit is now apparently running so much out of control that we now have to grasp these measures to uproot people 200 miles. I've said it before, I'll say it again. The answer can never be to uproot working class people from communities where they have lived in some cases for generations, where their kids go to school, where their families are embedded in the community. The answer is much more simple. Cap the rents and attack the millionaires. The attack is breathtaking and it takes its toll. And whilst our movement is never just about individuals, individuals are really important. And there's too many to name, but I want to just make one reference to somebody who may or may not be in the room, but I think encapsulates how the tenacity of an individual can sometimes triumph or come close to triumphing against all the odds. And that person's Eunice Bash. The double whammy. His employer victimised him, and then the people who should defend him, his trade union, decided to stick the boot in as well. I tell you what, you know, one of my proudest moments in the PCS is when our national conference decided, whatever his union did, we were going to send him a donation to his campaign to try and get justice. And that campaign continues, years down the track. And none of us can know the real toll of 4 years out of work, 4 years being victimised, 4 years being charged with false accusations can take on an individual. But it's an inspiring story, because what it tells us is, against all the odds, if we keep our nerve, we keep our dignity, and we keep our will to fight for justice, then we can prevail. Well done, Eunice, and it's most exciting. Has been full of economic analysis and looking at exactly what's happening. We know it's breathtaking. We know about the international scale of assault on working class people. We also know that those who run our country don't want working people to have a debate. When I went on the radio a year ago in a debate with Ruth Lee, that horrible right-wing woman from the Institute of Directors, and I said there was no debate in the country about international markets overtaking democracy and ensuring that working people paid the price for the folly of those at the top, she said to me, and I quote, "Young man, just because you have not had the debate in the Pig and Whistle, don't imagine for a minute that the people who matter have not had it on financial markets." I have to say I've never been to the Pig and Whistle. But the reality is what a condescending remark that gives the game away. Yeah, they take the decisions, they laugh all the way to the bank, we pay the price with our jobs, our services, our futures and our hope. And that should give us the absolute motivation to fight back. And in fighting back, we've got to support every struggle, from the smallest community campaign to the largest national industrial action. We've got to recognise out of small victories, confidence grows and they can become large victories. And the job of socialists and campaigners and trade unionists now is to be on every picket line, in every occupation, in every demonstration, whether it's defending welfare, keeping libraries open, defending jobs, or stopping privatisation. And comrades, if we do that, we will create the momentum that will mean this autumn does not have to fizzle out in the disgraceful way that TUC leaders wanted to happen after November the 30th. We prepare now painstakingly. We recognise that the weakness of November the 30th, brutally exploited by some union leaders, was that the rank and file in some of our unions is not yet strong enough in order to stop the leaders selling out. We've got to redouble our efforts in those unions to ensure that strikes aren't just called at the whims of general secretaries, they are strikes called with the support of members, and only members should be able to call them off. We've got to also challenge the sectionalism that can still sometimes exist in our movement, where when we actually need across the board class solidarity, too many people retreat into what's happening in their section or their particular part of the public sector. Comrades, the answer is simple. We will not win on pensions or defeat austerity in one section alone. We must all come out together, because to win we have to defeat the government, and to do that we need mass coordinated industrial action. So comrades, I'll finish on this point. The challenges in front of us are enormous. The things that will happen in the next year will shape our communities for decades and generations to come. And what I hope we can do leaving here today, as we get back to our workplaces and our campuses and our communities, is to say this. When history is written, when the reckoning comes, let every single person here be able to look at their kids and their family and their friends and to say, you know what? Despite everything they threw at us, despite everything our so-called leaders did, despite everything that ruling class people told us to accept, we fought like lions, we never gave up, we turned the tide, and we can look forward to a world a whole lot better than this one we currently have. So
to have the Egyptian comrades here telling us about the revolutionary process that's going on over there, being absolutely inspiring and showing us how we're actually putting Marxism to practice in a real revolutionary situation. Our next speaker is the woman who stood up to Jeremy Paxman live on Newsnight. Socialist in Egypt. She's also a very influential blogger and tweeter, and unbelievably this is Gigi Ibrahim's first Marxism, and so it's absolutely fantastic to have her speaking at our closing rally.
The Egyptian revolution has inspired everyone, including Egyptians themselves. I mean, we keep on surprising ourselves every time we go to the streets and so on. And it has been truly one of the best experiences I think I'll ever have. And you know, I hopefully last all my life, basically. I think listening to all the speeches throughout Marxism, you know, you get inspired so much by all of the actions and the strikes that are taking and happening everywhere, whether in Spain or in here in Britain or in Greece and so on. I mean, it's really a wonderful event that you can share experiences and know that if all these things can be linked, you know, if they all can be coordinated together, what a wonderful, just powerful people's power, international people's power, that workers' power, that it can impact and transcend into a global revolution. And this is our hope, and hopefully, you know, it will happen. The Egyptian revolution has started and kicked off, and then spilled everywhere. But I want to focus on the highlights that were very much in the in the international media and so on, and hopefully try to link to what's happening now and the future of it. One thing has been consistent in this revolution is that nothing is predictable at all. Every time we try to say this is a downturn, or this is, some people say inside Egypt and outside as well, saying that the revolution is hijacked, or the revolution has lost, or we don't know what we're going to do now, or we're so defeated. Because obviously, when you're in the moment and seeing all this horrific pictures of violence and repression that are coming out of Egypt, and the amount of martyrs and injured, and those who lost their eyes, and the thousands of close to 15,000 that are still in military prison, you say, wow, it's really not going well at all. But this shows you much the system is fighting back. This shows you how much they're afraid of the people being in power, of this revolution possibly succeeding. I mean, that they have to use their tanks, their media, their military courts. I mean, every possible weapon that they have, whether hard or soft, they use it against the revolution. And that makes you realize how powerful and essential this fight is, not just, you know, in Egypt, but regionally and essentially globally. I'll give you a little bit of a confession. In the presidential elections, I was for the boycott. Yeah, you can sign them. Initially, I was for the boycott, but not because I hadn't, you know, I had Ikhwanophobia or like Islamophobia, which a lot of those opposed or called for the boycott really saw basically that the SCAF and the Muslim Brotherhood are two faces of the same coin. I definitely don't believe that that's the case, and there is a clear difference between, you know, military tanks and capitalists with beards, which that's what Muslim Brotherhood are. But because I was 110 convinced, like many Egyptians, that this is a scam. You know, this whole election play is a scam, and it's not going to do anything. And even if we all go vote for Morsi, which is the right thing to do, which I'm glad, you know, at the end we endorsed this first, you know, and a lot of comrades were fighting for that. But even if we all go vote for Morsi, like still the counter-revolution candidate Shafi will win because SCAF controls everything. They control the security. They're actually, like, the ballot boxes spend nights and nights with the soldiers. So like they can easily swap the ballot boxes like they usually do. Yes, it won't be overt rigging like Mubarak days. They don't dare to do that anymore. But you know, it would still be somehow rigged, especially the fact that the dissolved National Democratic Party is still working, and it was strongly mobilizing for Shafi to win. So I was really convinced that Shafi is becoming president, and the only thing that we have to do now is basically to build and to organize and to prepare the tunnels to fight, and you know, the streets and the revolution is the way, and screw this, you know, scam for elections. And thank God I was wrong. Oh boy, was I wrong. And I'm really thankful that I was wrong. Even though John Milano yesterday told me that this is more of a reason why you should have endorsed Morsi, but I still, you know, thought that I was right in taking the boycott position at first. But when the election results came out, and we were for 5 days basically panicking, like what's going to happen, because they kept delaying the official results, and nobody knew what was going to happen. And basically both campaigns were saying that they won, and everybody, almost of everybody that I know, was 110% convinced that that's it. They postponed the official results because they're fixing it for Shafi. And I mean, all these kinds of conspiracy theories, but would make sense at the time. And until the moment when we waited for like 3 hours for the guy to read the papers and find out the official results, I was sitting down and I was saying, okay, theoretically, numerically, I mean, Morsi should win because he got the majority in the first round. And when the results came out, I couldn't be more than happy to find out that Morsi won. This meant not that we would expose, of course, the Muslim Brotherhood and break them apart and recruit all their youth who are revolutionary. That's what we want. It told me something very, very important, and for one moment I felt like it was the day that Mubarak stepped down. That SCAF wouldn't dare and couldn't do it, couldn't act actually rig the election. They were that much afraid of the people's reaction that if they would have they were fearing the people's reaction, and that is a revolutionary game. That is exactly what the revolution achieved so far. This is the most important thing I believe that the revolution achieved so far, is that those in power are now putting in the equation the people's reaction. People will take to the street. I mean, it's not that they could not have done it. They could have. I mean, they had the power to, but they didn't because they calculated people's reaction, and that is a game. And I was very happy, and I felt so much more optimistic and so happy that we have done something. But when all this is said and done, I mean, we are still in a place where organizing the working class is a matter of life and death. I mean, you think about when Marianne was talking about, solidarity work and so on, and coordinating and networking. This is absolutely exactly what we need in Egypt, because there is no one group that is organized and rooted enough that can lead, the working class or a plan like a mass strike, for example. Largely the strikes are still spontaneous, and we as a revolutionary socialists are the biggest, organized left that have roots in hotspots or in important industrial places. But to link this to what's happening in Tahrir or what's happening in the revolution is basically our campaign right now and what we're trying to achieve. Imagine, like right now, I was looking at my Twitter before I come up, and there are 7 people who just got a 7-year sentence in military prison in Suez, okay? And this is because of the clashes in Abbasiyah that happened in about February or so. And imagine that the Suez workers in the Suez Canal just basically decide to shut down Suez Canal in solidarity with those people. Yeah, imagine. If even before it goes to court and military tribunals, what if the workers just went on strike demanding that they free all, all the detained, and so on? This is such a powerful thing that the military wouldn't dare to do it in the first place. They wouldn't dare to kill protesters, to detain them, or to torture, or to strip naked women in the street. They wouldn't even dare do it because they would fear the consequence, just like they did in the elections. So, for us, organization is a key, and we're at a time of the revolution where socialism is kind of trendy. So it would be almost, I think, a complete failure if we don't manage to do it. And hopefully by the next year, we can hopefully call for a party and start really establishing ourselves. But I want to give you hope that before the revolution, the revolutionary socialists at the day of when the revolution happened, we were maybe about 200 cadres, and we worked underground secretly for maybe 2 decades. And now, a year and a half later, we're about close to 1,000 cadres. With about 5,000 supporters around us. So we have come definitely a long way, but there's still a lot to do, and there's still a lot to organize. So what I want to leave you with is that you have time to organize. You have the space to organize and to build your machine that can bring the system down. This is what we're trying to do in Egypt, and if you manage to do it here and bring your system down, then definitely this will help us in Egypt in our fight, in our struggle. Absolutely, absolutely. Britain is not so special, the revolution can happen in Britain as well. I want to say is that your solidarity and your fight and your struggle in your unions, in your universities, in your factories are exactly the same fight and struggles that the Egyptian working class and the teachers and the women and the Christians and everybody in Egypt who is oppressed and fighting for the struggle. We share a common ground. We share a tradition and we share struggle, and if we definitely keep the networks going and the coordination of solidarity, then we can all bring down the system together. Thank you very much.
The National Secretary of the Socialist Workers' Party, Charlie Kimber.
Well, comrades, it's been a fantastic 5 days, I'm sure. Not such a great week for the banking. I don't know if you saw that this week the British Bankers Association had to cancel its summer party. Worth remembering, by the way, that around this time of year they have a summer party. Or is it next year, perhaps? And they had to do it, according to Angela Knight, the Chief Executive Officer of the BBA. It would be wrong to precede, Angela emailed guests. We regret the short notice, but our industry needs to think long and hard about its collective behaviour. Indeed they do, and we can assure you this night we're thinking about your collective abolition. They say that, well, you know, there's no collusion at the top of these things, do they? If you look at the website that originally had for the party, it says it brings together... It brings together political figures, senior members of the banking community, high-level officials at the Bank of England, the Financial Services Authority, and members of Her Majesty's Treasury. There's a place for a tax inspector, Marianne. Indeed, it would probably be a suitable place for one of those raids where they kick down the door and arrest everyone. Just by the way, isn't it great to see it in Spain? The man who was the head of Bankia and the former IMF chief is now facing criminal fraud accusations. I'm far too sophisticated to make fun of people's names, but it is wonderful. It probably doesn't work in Spanish, but his name is Rato as well. The other thing is the sponsor of the event. The sponsor was Huntswood, which again, according to their website, specialise in banking governance and full compliance with all banking legislation. Comrades, we're facing very big challenges in front of us. We know that there will be a scorched earth policy towards every aspect of social provision if this lot get away with it. That's the truth. There's a social counter-revolution in prospect. The neoliberal carpet bombing of the Greek economy shows you the sorts of future that's in front of all of us, if we let them. And therefore there is a great responsibility on all of us to make sure that we drive towards the hot autumn for the coalition. 3 great pillars of it. Crucially, the demonstration on the 20th of October. We want 1 million on the streets. We want to see it as a launch pad for further struggle. We want to see the strikes as soon as possible after that demonstration involving the teaching union, yes, but many other unions as well. Fantastic, the PCS is lining up for that. We want to see millions of workers on strike in November. And we want to see the student demonstration on the 21st of November to be a huge explosion of anger over the reality for people's lives at the moment. And we want that hot autumn to be a precursor of an even hotter winter, because we're not going to have 2011 in the same way again. We're not going to have a few moments of resistance and then have it snuffed out by a bunch of union bureaucrats in the Labour Party. And by the way, thank you, a big thank you to Mark Sawatka for the fact that in December of last year, he came out and said absolutely clearly, this is a crap deal and we're not having it, it's rubbish and every union ought to be. We need to make sure that next time, it's not just one day, it's not just an attempt to let off steam, it's a movement that goes forward, even with a few unions to start with perhaps, that give a lead and make sure that it's a strike that is long enough and hard enough and deep enough, but wins, yes, perhaps over pensions or over pay, but lays the basis for bringing down this government. If we're going to do that, we need to build amongst the rank and file of the trade union movement. And wasn't it great, one of the best things of the last year we've had of the electricians' victory, of seeing rank and file workers uniting with the Occupy movement, using official and unofficial action, and beating some of the biggest multinationals that exist on this planet. Comrades, we are full of glorious defeats. Sometimes we need victories, and we need more victories now, and the electricians gave us them, and we need more of those again. And the United Resistance Conference on the 17th of November will be another important staging post for all of us, workers, trade unionists, students, pensioners, unemployed, whatever, to come together to make sure that this movement flows into a permanent organisation of people that can put the pressure on the people at the top of the movement and act independently of them when they don't strike and they don't fight. We need also to guard against division. Because let's be clear, it's not just the left that's trying to profit from this crisis. It's also true that the fascists and the racists are trying to benefit. We've seen the rise of Golden Dawn in Greece. We've seen the big vote for Front National in France. We see the racists here as well try to organise, and guarding against that division is absolutely crucial and critical. And therefore, all strength to the mobilisations against the EDL in Bristol this weekend, in Waltham Forest on the 18th of August, and we pledge ourselves to combat, to stop the EDL wherever they raise their heads, wherever they try and march, wherever they try and intimidate people. We will be there on the streets to stop them. The question of racism is not just a question, however, about the EDL and the British National Party. It's also a question of the cops, it's a question of the mainstream of politics. What a disgrace it was that Ed Miliband took the chance not to rail against the system, but to blame immigrants for the problems that exist in society. But Miliband should have said that if there's a housing crisis, it's because last year we had the lowest level of house building since 1923. If he wants to say there's a problem with jobs, he should say it's because we allow bosses to lay off people, destroy our services, and that we allow the government to get away with getting rid of 2 million public sector workers. He should have said that the great question facing all of us in this crisis is, do we blame the migrant or do we blame the bankers? And we blame the bankers, not the... It's not just a few elements that we're fighting about. We're fighting against a system where a tiny class of people owns and controls all the important levers of economic power. That means we're either exploited at work or we're unemployed. We're robbed by an obscenely wealthy 1%. And because we have rebellion against them, they have a state protected by cops and soldiers to put us down. They'll use racism, sexism and homophobia to divide us, and they'll let the planet burn rather than interfere with their profits. They whip up nationalism and murderous wars, and they give the appearance of democracy, but the real decisions are wholly walled off from any real democratic control. No genuine human liberation or progress is possible under such a system. And that's why we need not just a movement that fights back over individual issues. Comrades, we need a revolution. That revolution will be an international one. I'm just looking at the banners around here. Turkey, Spain, Germany, Catalonia, is it? Turkey again, Canada, Stoke-on-Trent. Yes, comrades, our revolution will reach even Stoke-on-Trent. An international revolution, and therefore when we look at the struggles of people in the Asturian miners, or in Greece, or in Quebec, or in Egypt, it's not just we watch them as observers. Comrades in Egypt, or in Greece, or wherever, they are our brothers and sisters, they are our comrades, they are part of the same movement as us. We are in one movement across the globe now, and we stand or fall together. And therefore for us, we are for an international revolution. Our tradition is not that of the Stalinists. Our tradition is one of international socialism, and that works from the most basic solidarity to the greatest potential to spread the revolution across the world. We stand together, workers of the world unite. We face a very vicious ruling class, a very centralised ruling class, a very organised ruling class, and therefore we've got to get organised. You see, it's not an accident that the electricians won. It's depending on activists, people like Ian Bradley who's in the audience there, who gave leadership towards it. It's not an activist, it's not an accident that there's only two countries in Europe where there's not a big far-right movement, Spain and Britain. And the reason is because there are organised anti-racist movements, anti-Nazi movements inside of the combat and contest the rise of such movements. It's not an accident in Britain that we've held back the EDL and the BNP. It's because United Against Fascism exists, and because we have revolutionary socialists at the centre of it. It's not an accident that the argument to unite the squares and the factories is raised in Egypt. It's because the revolutionary socialists exist. It's not an accident that in Greece there's an argument now to contest and confront Golden Dawn. It's because SEC, our organisation, has pioneered that argument. It's not an accident, and therefore we have to grow the strength of revolutionary forces across the world. We have to make sure there is a stronger socialist spine to the resistance wherever it may be. And I express myself to three audiences. Firstly, to young people. You can decide whether you're young or not. But this system offers no future for young people. Absolutely no future. It offers them, unless it's overthrown, an entire generation condemned to unemployment, poverty, the cops and war. That's what it offers them. 50% youth unemployment in large parts of the world today. And young people to be involved in this movement, you're right to be here. Against the idea it's simply you for yourself, against the cynicism that says you can't change anything in the world. It's right to be here. And we want your energy and your initiative and for you to lead inside the movement. We want you to be part of the Socialist Workers' Party and of uniting of workers and students together to fight for a future for all of us. Secondly, I address myself to perhaps older people who've been around the party for a while and are not sure whether they join, or perhaps were involved for a bit and fell away from it. Maybe that was your fault, maybe that was our fault, we can talk about that. But if you've been around for a while and you think, maybe I should join, maybe I shouldn't, this is the time to make that decision. Now is the time to be part of it, because we need to have a socialist spine at the centre of the movement, and big questions are coming. And this is my third audience, which is to all of you, which is to say, over the next decade, huge things will be decided. Huge things will be decided. They're going to try and keep pushing the austerity agenda through. They will whip up more racism. They will give more succour to the fascists. They will launch new wars if they regard it as necessary to try and crush us. And on our side, it is inconceivable that this level of assault will not lead to more explosions like the Egyptian Revolution, to more mass strikes, to more Occupy movements, to more great student demonstrations, to more potential to change the world. And therefore this is the critical time. This is the time when we will all be counted about which side we are on and whether we help to shape the movement towards which can win. There's a song that's rippled across the world, On lâche rien. We're not giving up. We're not giving up in the struggle against the bosses and their system, but we need to do more than struggle. We need to overcome them. And that requires revolutionary organisation. In the war of workers against the bankers, we need a revolutionary party which is providing the clarity of ideas, the leadership in struggle, the memory of how our side can win. And that's why I say to all of you, be part of that hot autumn. Build for the 20th of October, but also today, join the Socialist Workers' Party.